Night, what do you mean when you say fuel contamination can be one of the possible reasons? And how does that impact the ability of the pilot to try to control the flight? How does that compromise safety?
Yeah, well, there could be a number of different factors that cause this incident. Fuel contamination could be one, but there are many others. It appears from the footage and also from the Mayday signal released by the captain that he had no thrust. The aircraft could fly perfectly well on one engine, take off and land perfectly well, but with no thrust, it seems likely that there was a dual engine failure, which could be a number of different reasons. I noticed on at the point of takeoff, there seemed to be a cloud of dust, and that could have been some debris. It could have been something in the engine, or indeed sort of bird strike going through the engine that created that. But of course, it's difficult to tell. I'm sure the investigators will be looking at all the data from the black box to see exactly what happened. It's too early to tell what happened, but it's clear that the pilot was still in control of the aircraft, and he did his best to try and bring the aircraft down as safely as he could. The facts. I mean, it's extremely tragic, and all our thoughts go out to all the people, the families that have been caught up in this. But there were, I think, 8 people's lives lost on the ground. It could have been much worse. So the pilot was faced with a very difficult decision and tried to bring the aircraft down as best he could with very limited time. He obviously had no option but to do an emergency landing and very little time to do one.
John Gradek, would you agree with him that very little time to respond and react, and the height of the plane, the distance of the aircraft from the ground was very less. So there was very less space for the pilot to also maneuver. Also, just by looking at the footage, can you, comment on whether or not the fact that the landing gear was not retracted was creating a drag, or the angle of the flaps was something that may have led to this?
Well, we have people that have been looking at videos, some experts, that have examined the positioning of equipment on board the airplane, and you notice that the flaps were not extended. Typically, when you in fact look at a takeoff, you have flaps that have been extended, and typically the landing gear is retracted within about 30 seconds of takeoff. So in this aircraft, it doesn't seem to have the flaps, extended. The landing gear is still, deployed. I think the cabin crew, the cockpit crew, was just managing to deal with the loss of thrust. The checklist that they usually have for these types of retraction and stowing of equipment was, put aside, and they were just trying to save that airplane and the passengers on board the airplane through whatever means they could. When you see the nose up position, as you see in the video, that's an indication that the flight crew was in fact trying to maintain, attitude and to try to maneuver the airplane ever so slightly, even with a loss of powers. That aircraft, the flight crew knew full well that they were in trouble, and they were trying to in fact minimize impact on the ground. And as Jason said, there was a valiant effort by the crew to try to minimize ground damage. And unfortunately, we had some fatalities on the ground.